Hi everyone, my name is Emma Townsend, and today I'm going to be talking about deviance and gender. Specifically, does gender influence a court's ruling? Now, why does this matter? Gender is a social construct influencing everything from how we express ourselves as individuals to how others perceive us. It's important to understand the ways in which society perceives gender, and that gender bias is a real, tangible thing operating within society. If two humans can commit the same societal crime but receive different sentences based on gender, then what should we do? So now, let's talk about background and theories. First, what is crime and deviance? From the University of Almeria, located in Almeria, Spain, they quote that deviance refers to any behavior, belief, or condition that violates societal norms or expectations. These norms are not always codified into law, but are socially agreed upon standards that guide acceptable behavior. Deviance can range from minor violations, like wearing unusual clothing, to major offenses, such as drug abuse or violent acts. On the other hand, crime involves behaviors that are illegal and punishable by law. Crime represents a specific type of deviance, one that violates formal written laws. Crimes are categorized into various types, such as violent crimes, like murder and assault, property crimes, like theft or vandalism, and white collar crimes, like fraud or embezzlement. Some theories to support this are going to be first, strain theory, which was developed in 1938 by Robert Merton. Deviance occurs when individuals are unable to achieve culturally approved goals through legitimate means. In response, they may resort to criminal behavior as an alternative. For example, someone lacking resources to succeed academically may turn to drug dealing in order to find financial success through an alternative method. The second theory is going to be the social learning theory, developed in 1939 by Edwin Sutherland. Deviance and criminal behavior are learned through interactions with others. People may adopt criminal behaviors if they are exposed to individuals who engage in such actions. This theory highlights the role of peer groups and social networks in shaping behavior. The third theory is going to be the labeling theory, which emerged in the mid 20th century. Deviance is not inherent in an act, but is the result of society's reaction to that act. When individuals are labeled as deviant, they may internalize this label and continue engaging in deviant behavior. This concept underscores how societal reaction can perpetuate crime and deviance. The fourth theory is going to be control theory, which states individuals are more likely to engage in deviance when their bonds to society are weak. These bonds can include attachment to family, commitment to conventional goals, involvement in social activities, and belief in societal norms. Weakening these bonds makes deviance more likely. Next, I'm going to go over common types of crime defined in sociology. The first is going to be violent crime, which is where a person is harmed. Some examples are going to be murder, assault, rape, sexual assault, robbery, kidnapping, and harassment. Next most common are going to be property crime, where it involves criminal activity that does not do bodily harm to a person, but rather focuses on private property. This includes theft, arson, defacement of property, and motor vehicle theft, and much more. The third most common is going to be white collar crime, which is acts of fraud committed by businessmen. Violent behavior is not typically associated with violent, but these types of crimes are committed to gain or avoid losing money or property. Money laundering, corporate fraud, mortgage fraud, Ponzi schemes, and embezzlement are the most common examples of white-collar crimes. Organized crime refers to criminal activity committed by organized groups of individuals at a local, regional, national, or international level. Some examples of these groups could be the mafia, terrorist groups, and mobsters. Drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, counterfeiting are among most of the most prevalent illegal activities committed under the banner of organized crime. And the last commonly seen type of crime through a sociological lens will be consensual or victimless crime, which refers to crimes that do not directly harm other individuals or property, but individuals choose to participate in risky behaviors that may be considered against the law. An example of this could be indulging in drug use, prostitution, or obscenity. Now, let's get to the actual research. The first is going to be a study done in 1979 to 1983. The U.S. Department of Justice quotes a study from the Federal Probation Volume 50 from the NCJRS Library. Gender differences in sentencing were examined in data for 1,249 male and 1,241 females sentences as first-time, non-dangerous offenders found guilty of serious crimes in Arizona. Their results were, of all cases, 98.1% were resolved through pleas. Females were more likely to have outcomes determined by pleas to reduce charges than were males. Fewer women, 17%, than men, 28%, were incarcerated, but sentence dispositions varied greatly across the 8 major offense categories. While the percentage of males incarcerated for each category always exceeded that of women, women were more likely to be sentenced to jail for robbery and assault than were men. Men were more likely than women to be incarcerated for property crime. This suggests that women may be sanctioned more harshly when their behavior violates sex role stereotypes. Finally, comparisons of sentence lengths indicate that prison terms of males and females did not differ. The terms of probation for males were significantly longer for females, and males also received significantly longer jail terms. Next. Sonja Starr's 2012 study estimating gender disparities in federal criminal cases finds large gender gaps favoring women throughout the sentence length distribution, which averages over 60%. Conditional on arrest offense, obviously, criminal history, and other pre-charge observables. Female arrestees are significantly likelier to avoid charges and convictions entirely, and twice as likely to avoid incarceration if convicted. From initial appearance to sentencing, do female defendants experience disparate treatment? From a 2015 study by 4 researchers, they explored the outcomes at 2 key stages of the criminal justice process. They examined decisions that judges made at a defendant's first appearance in hearing and during sentencing. The researchers analyzed 3,593 felony cases that had been referred in 2009 to the County Office of the Prosecutor of a large urban jurisdiction in northern United States. Their results were: A. Women were less likely to be detained before trial. They were 46% less likely than men to be held in jail prior to a trial. B. Women were released on bond were given lower bond amounts. Their bonds were set at amounts that were 54% lower than what men were required to pay. C. Women were 58% less likely to be sentenced to prison. E. Black female defendants were, in some ways, treated differently than white female defendants. Black women were assigned higher bond amounts and were more likely to be sent to prison than white women. Women of both races were equally likely to be released prior to a trial. The authors hypothesized that judges might treat female defendants more leniently when they conform to traditional gender roles of a housewife or mother. The researchers found that the support for the evil woman theory suggests that this chivalry is reserved for certain groups of women who appear to be docile and in need of protection. And the last piece of evidence I found was from the United States Sentencing Commission and is a 2023 study done on demographic differences in federal sentencing. They found that sentencing differences continue to exist across demographic groups when examining all sentences imposed during a 5-year study period, from the years 2017 to 2021. So in this figure 2, they found that across all analyses, females received sentences that were shorter on average than males. When examining all sentences imposed, females received 29.2% shorter than males. Females of all races were 39.6% more likely to receive a probation sentence than males. And when examining only sentences of incarceration, females received lengths of incarceration 11.3 shorter than males. In the next picture on the right, figure 3, the commission found that females were more likely to receive a probation-only sentence compared to males. And a probation-only sentence is where the females were only convicted and placed on probation. Specifically, females were 39.6% more likely to receive a probation-only sentence compared to males. Now, what's my interpretation? Gender disparities in federal sentencing in the United States reveal a pattern in which male defendants, on average, receive longer and harsher sentences than female defendants, even when controlling for offense type and criminal history. Sociologically, this disparity can be interpreted through the lens of gender norms and the chivalry hypothesis. We suggest that courts may treat women more leniently because they are perceived as less dangerous, more reformable, or more bound to caregiving roles. At the same time, the quote, evil woman hypothesis highlights that when women deviate from traditional gender expectations, for an example, committing violent or atypical crimes, they may be punished more harshly, illustrating how gender operates as a cultural script within legal institutions. These patterns underscore how the criminal justice system is not gender neutral, but instead reflects broader societal expectations regarding masculinity, femininity, and deviance. Ultimately, the disparities reveal how structural power, gendered stereotypes, and institutional practices intersect to shape legal outcomes, demonstrating the deep entanglement between law and social stratification. To conclude, what are the insights and implications? Studying gender disparities in federal sentencing ultimately teaches us that the law does not operate in isolation from the society it serves. Instead, it reflects our collective assumptions about who is dangerous, who is redeemable, and whose circumstances deserve compassion. Recognizing these patterns forces us to confront the ways gender expectations quietly sorry recognizing these patterns forces us to confront the ways gendered expectations quietly shape outcomes that carry profound consequences for people's lives. The implications reach far beyond sentencing statistics. They remind us that a just system requires continual self-examination and a willingness to challenge the norms that guide our judgments. In this sense, exploring gender disparities is not only an academic exercise, but a call to build institutions that better honor fairness, dignity, and the complexity of a human experience. Thank you so much. And then here are my reference lists. Thank you.